Oh no,
My
I got
light.
a message. It is recording. You want me to stop it?
No. We can edit it.
Okay.
Okay. Is that too much light in my glasses?
Hey, Dionne.
Hey, Candice.
Hey, YouTube, Facebook family. I'm Candice Richardson Dickens, and this is,
Dionne Brown-Bushrod.
and welcome to Candid on Life Matters. We want to invite you at the beginning to like and share this with everyone so that everyone in the community can have information and content that's relatable. So, is there a topic that you want to talk about, Dionne?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. So we got to talk about the pandemic.
Yes.
March 11th, but March 13th resonates in my mind, which maybe was the Maryland state of emergency. Who knows? Whatever. It's a year later.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to touch on how people are coping. Like I've been watching very carefully. Oh, the next trend is mental health. And what are we going to do about the children and their education? And just about every expert, they're saying that mental health is going to be a big deal, but they're not saying what you're going to do about it, what you need to look out for, how to take care of your mental health. You know, it's all these like researchers, the statistics of the population and the mental health crisis. And I'm waiting for so what are people supposed to do?
Yeah.
We need to talk about what people need to do.
Mm-hmm. In order to have good health.
And what is the difference, right? Like, how do you know that you're in a mental health crisis? How have you been addressing that with your clients?
By looking at, what are the symptoms of being in crisis? Because it's interesting, 1 year later, a lot of us are still experiencing a lot of the symptoms of being isolated, being depressed because lack of contact, lack of ability to move in between the seasons. Because normally spring comes, we're like, oh, it's time to go out, we can do this. And then you have this experience where you really can't go out very many places. So spring and summer look alike and fall look alike, except the temperature changes, but your activities don't change. So psychologically, the brain doesn't get an opportunity to know the difference. It looks the same and feels the same, and it creates a lot of agitation, depression, and anxiety about, getting the virus, but also anxiety about being vulnerable and not knowing what the truth is, because there have been so many misinformation in the media, right? So there's confusion about COVID, but then there was confusion about how to be safe, and there was confusion about the vaccine, especially within the African American community. There's so many messages that people don't know what to trust and what to do.
Right. And it's become so, in a way, routine that people are just remaining on edge, that they don't notice that something might be wrong. With the economy allegedly opening and kids going back to school, and again, people not really noticing that something is wrong. So that thing about the agitation, like what does that look like?
Yeah.
Right? That I've been indoors, it's the pandemic. It's the pandemic and you've been indoors, or are you really having a mental health crisis? Right? So there's this other thing. When I say thing, it's like the energy, it's the stuff happening in people's lives and what's happening to them, and how they're happening to the world. So it's this space of people not knowing that they're not okay. And everybody, and I'm using a superlative, right? But everybody around them is not okay. So you don't notice that people are not okay.
Yeah.
So that,
and not being okay becomes a norm. We all are not okay.
Right. And it's like, what do you do when you don't even know that you're not okay? So that's the first thing. I just want to put a pin in that. The second thing, how there's an emphasis to get back to normal, how there's an emphasis to just kind of roll with it. And I definitely, for Black folks, it's, one more adversity, one more thing to go through. You just got to keep rolling. First thing. So, if we want to give like practical suggestions on what to do, we joke about call a thing a thing. Well, in this case,
Mm-hmm.
we do have to call a thing a thing.
Yeah.
We do have to say, it's the pandemic. How do you think you're supposed to act?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's the
Absolutely.
pandemic. Our world is totally upside down. So it's the acceptance of it's going to be different. And you just have to
Absolutely.
let it be different.
Mm-hmm. And but also recognizing you can't treat something that you don't acknowledge that this is different, and but you've been different for the whole year. And difference might be I'm antsy. Difference might be I'm feeling helpless, feeling like this will never end, right? Difference might be for the first time you've become dependent on things to help you cope, right? Like gambling or sex addiction or alcohol or using any other chemicals. Difference might be I'm agitated with my kids and I'm isolating. I'm in bed more than ever before because now I can work from home and there's no one to monitor me and police me.
Right. Right. Just that isolation. No one can monitor me. No one can police me. No one has to make sure that I'm okay. No one has to challenge me. So, I'll make a long story long. And why stop now, Dionne? But I'm going to try to make it short.
Yeah.
So I talked to you Friday, right? And I'm like, "Ugh, sir," just that. Yeah. Got on a Zoom with my best girlfriends yesterday, and like the first probably hour, because we can roll like hours,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So like the first hour, I'm just like, "Ugh." Finally coming out of it, talking to you on Friday about the business stuff and the concerns and the
Mm-hmm.
worries, and then
Mm-hmm.
talking to my girls about just how I've been feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's this accountability. I
Yeah.
spoke it,
Mm-hmm.
so now it's time to do something about it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
hopefully, folks out there are getting the understanding. Call a thing. It's the pandemic, and it is nuts, right? As clinicians, we're not supposed to say nuts, but it's nuts.
It's
Okay,
nuts. Yeah.
it's nuts.
Yeah.
Call it and getting help if you're agitated, if you're frustrated, if you're feeling like nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
You don't care.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And
Reaching,
not caring sometimes translates to I'm having passive thoughts like I wish I wasn't here, or if something were to happen, I wouldn't be upset, right? Sometimes we don't have those active suicidal thoughts, but wishing that you could just disappear,
exactly.
right?
Oh my gosh, Candice. Now I'm in the same lane, but I'm veering a little bit. Did you see that interview with Meghan Markle?
I did, right? And the part where she said, I was so unhappy that I was having these thoughts that scared me. And I was hoping that it resonated with everyone, that you're not alone. That when things get so difficult and you feel so alone and understood, and you can't correct the situation, so you think, I just got to correct me by erasing me. That is very real.
Very real. Now, clinician to clinician, therapist to therapist.
Mm-hmm.
After, and if you recorded it or if you can like YouTube it, because I have it on DVR, I'm gonna save it for forever. Right after she talks about that, did you see the shudder? Eyes flittered a little, and
Yeah,
she's like looking around, looking for
yeah,
grounding.
yeah.
Oh, that moment that we see in the treatment room. That
Mm-hmm.
thing was real. That she's having this
Absolutely.
interview, but pushing through.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, that's when I needed
It's
Oprah to be a
huge.
therapist. I'm like,
Yes.
you're missing it.
Yes, and
You're
and
missing it.
and then the guilt that many of us feel when we have someone who's an oppressor or someone who's a violator, who we have a relationship with, and is I don't want to talk about this, I don't want to harm them, I don't want, right? That guilt that comes up with being a survivor, that if I say my truth, people are going to get hurt or people are going to be upset with me, right? So then I think that the only way I can fix this is by being silent, right? And killing my voice or
Right.
killing the personhood, right? That feeling of
Yeah.
powerlessness comes over. If I can't stop COVID, then I can always stop Candice. And it's dangerous.
So dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Being in that interview, yes, it's an interview, right? It's celebrity, it's all this stuff. But at that moment, my thought, and this is for every client that we see in the treatment space, what are your resources after this moment? And the people that you choose to share that space, right? Find how you can exercise your voice. It is so important.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that especially with people of power, they get punished for having pain. So
Yeah.
the backlash that she received was horrible from people who made fun of her and said she wasn't equipped emotionally and it was her fault. That blaming experience, which keeps a lot of people suffering in silence during COVID, with addiction is running high, domestic violence is running high because people are suffering in silence. And there's a fear that, well, no one's going to take me in because COVID's here. Or no one's going to understand me because I'm a pastor or I'm a social worker or I'm a doctor or a
Right.
dentist or
I'm a
I'm the
single
PT.
mom.
I'm a
I'm,
single
you know,
mom and right? That
yeah,
we suffer in
yeah,
silence because of the archetype that goes with that about what strength looks like.
absolutely. We got to strengthen this village. The mental health thing
Yeah.
for us has always been on the rise, right? So you
Mhm.
and I joke about like, we'll never go out of business because the world is cruel and
Yeah,
people are suffering. But
absolutely.
through the pandemic, really emphasizing the importance. So I promised you that I was going to start to make sure I watch myself. So some helpful things,
You don't have
right?
to.
Because I got my feet up. I was organizing the kitchen before we got on. So I'm like totally chilling now, but I'm gonna try to not hold you long. Um, the doing what works, right? Like it might be super silly, it might be unexplainable to other people, it might not make any sense even to yourself sometimes,
Mhm.
but finding that thing that gives you joy. And even in
Mm.
the midst of all of this suffering around us, or the midst of the suffering that people have personally experienced,
Yeah, yeah.
allowing the opportunity to say, it's okay if I find some joy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And also giving yourself permission to find joy, but attached to a safe person or a safe place. Like what I loved about, what we'll say, Miss Markle is that she connects to her husband
Yeah.
and he created a safe space for her because what he said was, I know what that's like because I saw my mother go through it, where she felt isolated and out of control. And I watched it and I wouldn't let it happen again. So he's watching Trauma Part Two, right? He saw the first one and now his wife is the sequel.
Man.
And what we'll say to people, if you want to deal with trauma, just like if you want to help addiction, connect with people, which is why we push people into the rooms. But we'll say if you're a traumatized person, the trauma happened when you were alone. So the healing has to happen when you have connection and you're not
Healing has
alone.
to happen. You know what? This is going to be a really freaky connection for me. The interview, because that moment when the double trauma, as therapist, I'm watching it like, oh no, Oprah's gonna miss it. She's gonna, oh, she missed it. Like, do you
Yeah.
know how much could have been, should have been
Mm,
discussed with him?
mm-hmm.
So the difference when you're
Mm,
connecting to people, are these people just popping into your life momentarily? And
yeah.
they're not going to push you to the hard places. They're not going to sit with you
Mm-hmm.
and walk you through that pain, that trauma, that
Yeah.
suffering, right?
Yeah.
So finding that trusted person, I'm sure Oprah's trusted, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And it was an interview, but that moment where he connected to, like, I've been through this.
Absolutely. And for her, what she said that resonated with me, when he said, I've been through this and I have a loss of a mother. And I think somewhere along down, she said, and I've had losses. I lost my father, the relationship, right? Lost the siblings attached to the father, then lost a child, and then lost the ability
Identity,
to keep her family safe. So many losses.
history.
Oh
Is
my
it just
goodness.
right? Oh, it's so important.
Ooh, yeah.
People need to feel connected.
Oh,
Now,
you do. And
what do
optimistic.
you
There's something that's there for you that could happen for you.
what do you do with clients that feel like, well, I live alone, I don't have anybody, I don't have a significant relationship, I don't have family, I'm not talking to my mother, I can't stand my father.
Hmm.
What do you do?
Connected to something outside of themselves. Do you have faith? Is there something else outside of you, whether it's spirituality or something that has meaning for you, that makes you feel like, wow,
Right.
there's connection somewhere, either here or in the universe. I'm connected to flowers. Then you're connected to nature, right? And connecting to strangers with NAMI or DRADA or any community support group is a way of having connection. I even say to people, hey, connect on Facebook, because if that Facebook helps you or Twitter helps you,
Okay, right?
and you get one like or no likes, at least you're in a community of people who know you're present.
Community of people, that connection. Just if you like to dance naked in the woods and howl at the moon, Google who near me dance naked in the woods and howl at the moon. Right? Like it's the pandemic. Get connected.
Yeah, you have to. You have to, because we're born out of connection. That's, it's the egg and the sperm. We're born out of connection. And
Right.
once we get socialized to be disconnected, dangerous things happen. Right?
Right.
Yeah. And
There's
then,
no gold star for suffering.
oh my goodness. No, not at all. And then it's interesting. Someone else I'd spoken to, they were talking about they feel so disconnected. There another population where I know the stimulus is coming out this week.
Mm,
And they said, well, I'm part of the population that didn't get any stimuli. And
yeah.
there's and then feeling other like, wow, we don't matter. Even though our bills have gone up as well, there's an assumption that we're just managing it. And there's another whole group that may not be managing it at all, who feel punished. And we'll say, even you have a voice and you matter. And
You have
everyone's pain
a
has to
voice.
matter.
You matter. Find that village, even if it's a village of one, even if it's a digital village, even if it's a village of educating yourself, like for that population of folks that are in a money crunch and not getting the stimulus package, figure out what you're going to connect to. Are you going to focus on next year? I'll be in a different financial circumstance. Are you going to change behaviors now? Get yourself focused and connected. It's worth it.
Oh, it really is. It really is.
Yeah.
And if it's hard for you to be connected to people outside, well, stay connected to the breath, connect to the touch, right? Connect to the body moving back and forth, right? Give yourself permission to take your shoes off and
Mm,
ground yourself, connect yourself to the earth. Because sometimes there is no one outside of them and there's no higher power. So, well, can you connect to you and have compassion just for you and let your heart break just for you?
just for you. Oh man, Candice, I need to get my church fan. Okay.
And it's
Right?
amen.
You hit it. I'm not gonna say another word. That's exactly it. You don't have anything or anybody. You have you and you matter. Even if you think you
Mm.
don't matter.
Say that again for people in the back seat who didn't hear you because they were running their mouth.
Like,
Say it
y'all
again.
ain't hear me though. Y'all ain't hear me though. Right. Yeah, you matter, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, Candice. As they say, I'm gonna let you go.
I think that I'm so grateful that you brought this up. And I think that people got a lot out of this. Please share this with other people because sharing this might save a life. It might make a difference. So like and
And
share
save
and
your
subscribe.
life.
Yes, it might save your life. So with that said, we will see you next time on Candid on Life Matters.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody. Happy Sunday.